Fall River, Massachusetts. A hot August morning in 1892. In a narrow house on 2nd Street, a maid scrubs the windows, a father lies down on a sofa, and a stepmother climbs the stairs to make a bed. Minutes later, a terrified cry rings out, so sharp the neighbors stop what they're doing. One body is on the couch, another is missing. So I'll start with who lived here, and where this began. Andrew Jackson Borden was a stern, frugal man who made money in banks, mills, and real estate. He loved locks, neat ledgers, and the habit of doing things the same way every day. Abby Durfee Borden, his second wife, ran the house calmly, dusting, cooking, keeping order. Lizzie Andrew Borden, their 32-year-old daughter, shared the home with her older sister Emma, though Emma was away visiting friends this week. The maid, Bridget Maggie Sullivan, knew every creak in the wood and every window that stuck in summer. The year was 1892, and this house at 92 2nd Street felt small for a family with money. The house's layout already tells you something. Upstairs rooms connected by doors instead of a hallway. Doors that were locked from room to room. A front door with 3 locks. Even the stairs felt narrow, like the house wanted to keep its own secrets. At the kitchen table, a pot of mutton soup kept coming back day after day, even in the August heat. That little detail tells you the tone of the home. Practical, strict, not generous. Tension had been building for months. Andrew had deeded property to Abby's relatives. Emma and Lizzie felt it wasn't fair. There had been a strange break-in the year before. Someone had rifled drawers and, depending on who tells it, took small things. No one was charged. The feeling in the house was not open conflict, but not warmth either. And then on the day before the murders, John V. Morse, uncle to Lizzie and Emma on their mother's side, arrived. He came to talk business with Andrew and stayed the night in the guest room. That guest room will matter. At first everything looked normal, until one detail didn't. People in the house had felt sick that week, nausea after meals. Abby told a friend she was worried someone might be trying to poison them. Maybe it was only spoiled soup in summer. Maybe it was more. And that brings me to the morning when the house went quiet. And then it broke. That brings me to the morning when the house went quiet. And then it broke. Thursday, August 4th, 1892. Bridget wakes early to cook breakfast. Andrew eats with Uncle Morse. Abby moves in and out. Lizzie says she isn't hungry. John Morse leaves around 8:45 a.m. to visit other relatives and says he'll be back around noon. Andrew heads downtown for small errands. The bank, a stop to see tenants. A short walk that keeps a man like him feeling in control. Abby begins upstairs chores. Bridget hauls pails and starts washing outside windows. From 9 to 10:30 a.m., the house moves like a clock. Abby makes the guest room bed where Morse slept. Bridget works the windows inside and out in the heat. Later, she will say she felt sick, went to lie down a few minutes, then went back to her work. Lizzie moves in and out of sight. In the kitchen for a bit, in the sitting room, maybe in the barn loft for lead sinkers for a fishing trip, maybe eating pears by the open loft window. The barn loft will become a debated place. Was the dust disturbed or not? Could anyone really sit up there long in the heat? But investigators soon discovered something that didn't make sense. If Abby was upstairs making a bed at 9:30 a.m., and if she was killed then, no one heard a scream, no one saw her leave, and no one noticed a stranger step out. It's a small house. Sound carries. So where did the sound go? And where did the killer go? Around 10:45 a.m., Andrew returns. The front door is stubborn. 3 locks fight the key. Bridget struggles with the last bolt. She later says she heard a laugh from inside when the bolt finally gave. People will argue forever about whose laugh that was. Andrew steps in, hot and tired, and, as some versions say, switches to slippers. Other versions show boots on the body later. These small contradictions will matter to some and not to others. But I'm noting them so you feel the case the way a detective does, through details that never quite sit still. Andrew settles on the sitting room sofa to rest. Lizzie says Abby has gone out to see a sick friend. Bridget, sweaty and nauseated, goes to her attic room to lie down. The house breathes, then goes still. Viewers, stay with me. because what happens next will surprise you. A little after 11 a.m., a shout slices the quiet. "Maggie, come quick! Father's dead! Somebody came in and killed him!" Bridget runs down. Andrew Borden lies on the sofa, his face destroyed by multiple blows from a sharp, heavy blade. The wounds are disturbing. I won't describe them in detail. The point is simple. This was intentional and close. The room shows no struggle. There are no footprints to follow out the door. Just shock, blood, and a daughter calling the maid. Neighbors arrive. Mrs. Churchill from across the street steps in. Dr. Bowen, the family doctor, is called. Lizzie says she didn't know where Abby is, that she may have gone out, that Lizzie herself had been in the barn for a little while. Dr. Bowen covers the body. Someone says what everyone is thinking. Where is Mrs. Borden? If you pause the clock here, the next choice changes everything. Do you trust the idea that Abby went out, or do you search the house? They search. Upstairs in the guest room, just past the bed that was half made, they find Abby on the floor, face down, already cold compared to Andrew. She has been struck repeatedly with a blade. This means what it seems to mean. 2 murders, likely 2 different times, in the same house, with no alarm loud enough to carry to the street. At first, everything looked like a single sudden crime, until this one detail changed the case forever. Abby appears to have died earlier, around 9:30 a.m. Andrew died close to 11 a.m. That gap becomes the center of the story. Either the killer stayed inside for nearly an hour, or the killer left unseen and returned unseen. Both are hard. Not impossible, just hard. The police start an immediate search. This is 1892. There is no DNA, no fingerprint database, no crime scene tape to keep the curious out. Neighbors come and go. The house fills with footsteps that do not belong to the killer, which is bad for evidence, but this is how it actually went. They check the basement. There they find several axes and hatchets. One hatchet head looks odd, clean with a broken handle. It looks as if someone snapped the handle off. Some dust appears rubbed over it, as if someone tried to make it look as though it had been sitting there for a long time. The police will later suggest this broken-handled hatchet as the likely weapon. It lacks the kind of blood a modern jury would want to see. But this is not a modern case. They check the barn loft. Some officers say the dust did not show the fresh tracks you'd expect if someone had been up there for a while. Others aren't sure. The August heat makes it unlikely someone stayed long, they say, but that is a feeling, not proof. The barn becomes a maybe. They check Lizzie's clothing. She is wearing a simple house dress with no obvious blood. Later, a friend named Alice Russell will say she saw Lizzie burn a blue dress in the kitchen stove on Sunday, after the murders, because it was ruined with paint. To some, that act is everyday housework. To others, it looks like a match touching dry wood. Investigators soon discovered something that didn't make sense. If Abby died first, and the killer stayed inside, how did the killer avoid leaving a trail into the sitting room? And if a killer left the house and then returned, why did no one see a strange face near 11 a.m. on a busy weekday street, with a maid cleaning windows and neighbors passing by? By afternoon, Uncle Morse comes back at the time he said he would. His movements that morning are specific. Streetcars, a visit, a meal, and he has witnesses. Bridget gives her timeline. Windows, nausea, rest, the cry, the running down the stairs. Lizzie gives hers. A short movement through the rooms, a trip to the barn, pairs in the loft, back to the house, then the shock of seeing her father. Some statements shift as she retells them. She will later be given morphine for nerves and will speak at an inquest in a way that sounds confused and sometimes contradictory. Autopsies happen the next day, right in the dining room, because that is how it was done then. The doctors remove the stomachs to test for poison. The tests come back negative. So the idea that the family had been poisoned in the days before is set aside. The cause of death is blunt force wounds from a sharp, heavy blade. The timeline is confirmed. Abby first, Andrew later. News spreads fast. A local pharmacist will later claim that Lizzie tried to buy prussic acid, cyanide, a few days before, allegedly to clean a sealskin cape. He says he refused to sell it. This rumor runs like fire, but at the trial the judge will exclude it. You can hear a rumor and remember it, but a jury might not be allowed to consider it. At first, everything looked like a clear suspect in a small house, until one legal detail changed everything. The inquest took hours. Lizzie's answers were taken while she was sedated with morphine. Later, the court will say many of those answers cannot be used against her the way the public used them in conversation. What the city heard as gotchas, the jury will not hear at all. Months pass. The trial begins in New Bedford in 1893. The courtroom fills with reporters, curious citizens, and an air of certainty from people who already made up their minds. The prosecution offers the house layout, the two-part timeline, the broken-handled hatchet, the burned dress, the locked doors, and the idea that no stranger could have done this without being seen. The defense offers a hard question. Where is the direct evidence? No clear weapon with blood, no bloody clothing saved from that morning, no eyewitness, and no confession. The police thought they had the right suspect, but a shocking twist was waiting. The judge excludes the prussic acid story. He limits how the inquest answers can be used. He allows the jury to hear about the house, the hatchet, the dress, the timing, but he also reminds them that suspicion is not proof. The jury deliberates for about 90 minutes. The verdict: not guilty. Lizzie walks out of court a free woman. It answers one question and creates three more. If not Lizzie, then who? If not a stranger, then how? And if the evidence is this narrow, what did we miss? After the trial, life tries to settle but never really does. Lizzie and Emma buy a larger home on French Street, name it Maplecroft, and try to live quietly. The city does not forget. A nursery rhyme rises. Lizzie Borden took an axe, which people repeat as if it were evidence. It isn't, it's a rhyme. But rhymes last longer than court transcripts. Emma and Lizzie eventually fall out and stop living together. Bridget moves away and keeps her memories mostly to herself. John Morse returns to his routine. The Second Street house keeps standing on its narrow lot, and people pass by slower when they reach the number over the door. I want to walk you through the hour by hour once more, like a diary, because the power of this case is how short it is, how it fits inside a morning k.a.m. Breakfast. Andrew, Abby, and Uncle Morse eat. Lizzie says she's not hungry. 8:45 a.m., Morse leaves. Andrew leaves. Bridget starts windows. Abby begins upstairs chores. 9:30 a.m. Abby is likely killed in the guest room while making the bed. No one hears a scream that anyone remembers. 10:45 a.m. Andrew returns. The front door jams. Bridget unlocks it after a struggle. A laugh is heard from inside. Andrew sits in the sitting room. 11:02 a.m. Andrew is killed on the sofa. Lizzie calls Bridget. "Father's dead." 11:10 a.m. About. Neighbors arrive. Dr. Bowen is called. A search for Abby begins. She is found upstairs in the guest room, already cold. Midday. Police search. Hatchets and axes found in the basement. The broken-handled hatchet stands out. Following day. Autopsies in the dining room. Organs checked for poison. Negative. Days later. Inquest. Morphine soft answers. Rumors about prussic acid. 1893. Trial. Key rumors kept out. Verdict: not guilty. Notice there's no big time jump. It all happens between breakfast and noon. That is why the case won't let go. Because the killer, whoever it was, either moved like smoke through a house full of sound, or waited inside the house for the clock to bring a second victim to a sofa. People still argue the possible paths without pretending certainty. Path 1. Insider, Lizzie. Motive: family tension, money, resentment. Means: knowledge of locks and routines. Opportunity: she was home. Problems for this path: no direct weapon tied to her, no bloody clothing retained, no eyewitness, and a jury that heard only what the law allowed and said no. Path 2. Intruder. Someone timed Andrew's return, slipped in a back door while windows were being washed, killed Abby, then either hid inside or left and returned for Andrew. Problems: No reported sightings, high risk in a small house on a weekday, and no clear escape trail. Path 3. Inside but not Lizzie, for example Bridget or Morse. This path has been floated, but both had timelines that stood up under questioning. Morse had outside witnesses. Bridget had work and sickness and no physical link. Problems, motive, and the same evidence gaps that limit Path 1. Two facts can't both be true, unless there's a third thing we missed. Fact A. Abby died earlier. Andrew died later. Fact B. No one saw a stranger come or go at the critical time. Possible. Third. The killer stayed inside between the two murders. If that is true, then either the killer was someone who belonged in that house, or someone who hid extremely well in a very small space, while neighbors moved close by and a maid came and went. Let me pause and place a few mini-hooks the way I would in a video, because they match what you might be thinking right now. At first, everything looked normal, until one detail changed the case forever. The discovery of Abby upstairs, already cold, but investigators soon discovered something that didn't make sense. The gap between the murders in a house that should have given up a sound or a sighting. The police thought they had the right suspect, but a shocking twist was waiting. The verdict that set Lizzie free. Viewers, stay with me because what happens next will surprise you. The way legal rules cut certain rumors. Out of the story, the jury heard. Two facts can't both be true. Unless there's a third thing we missed. The idea that the killer waited inside the house. Now back to the human center. Because it matters more than any theory, Andrew was not just a hard man with a bank key. He was a father who liked routine, safety, and the idea that a lock keeps the world out. Abby was not just a stepmother in a headline. She was a woman folding sheets on a hot morning, worrying about bad food in a summer kitchen. Lizzie was not just a rhyme. She was a church volunteer, a woman who wanted more than a small house on a busy street, and later a person who carried a shadow she could never set down. Bridget was not just the maid. She was a young immigrant working in heat and noise who ran to a cry and saw what nobody should have to see. At first it looked like a story with a clean answer, but the more you line up the hours, the more you feel the space between them. And that space is where people put their own beliefs. Some see a careful insider. Some see an intruder who took a narrow chance. Some see the law doing the only thing it could do with the evidence it had. Let's address three specific clues that always come up. The broken-handled hatchet. It looks like a weapon that has been fooled with. Handle snapped, dust rubbed. But the lack of clear blood makes it a maybe, not a must. In 1892, without modern tests, a maybe can feel like a must to a crowd. It didn't feel that way to the jury. The dress burning. Alice Russell says she saw Lizzie burn a blue dress days after the murders, calling it paint-stained. The defense says that's normal housework, and the Sunday timing is explainable. The prosecution suggests it looks like destruction of evidence. Two interpretations, no proof either way. The barn loft. Could someone sit there for 20 minutes in August? Maybe. Did the dust show that? Some officers thought not. Others weren't sure. The barn stays a soft spot, neither closed nor open. As for motive, people will tell you a dozen. Money, control, resentment. A household that felt small when the family's money suggested they could have lived bigger. Or if you prefer the intruder path, a motive tied to anger from outside, or a robbery that morphed into something worse. But the murders were done up close with multiple blows. That suggests anger or certainty, not a panicked grab and run. That's why the intruder with a quick temper theory is hard to land. Now we step to the status of the case, and I'll keep the language clear. Disputed, unsolved. The law produced a not guilty verdict for Lizzie Borden. No one else was ever charged. The weapons in the basement, the autopsies, the timelines, the inquest, the trial rules. They are still read and argued more than a century later. The house became a museum. The rhyme outlived the people, which brings me to you. In a case like this, what detail speaks loudest to you? The locked doors? The quiet guest room? The hatchet head with its missing handle? The dress in the stove? Or the gap between Abby's death and Andrew's death? A gap so small it fits inside a morning but so large it holds every theory people bring to it. If you had 5 minutes and could ask one person one question, who would it be? Bridget, Lizzie, or Dr. Bowen? And what would you ask? I'd ask Bridget about the laugh at the door. I'd ask Lizzie to walk me through the barn, minute by minute, with nothing in her hands but time. I'd ask Dr. Bowen what he noticed in the first minute that he never found words for later, until someone invents a way to roll the morning back and listen to the house breathe again. This is where we stand. Breakfast to noon. 2 rooms, 1 narrow staircase, and a verdict that closes a legal book but leaves a story open on the table. I'll keep the page open until the truth walks in.